Have you ever tried to make your own vegan bath bombs? Well, I have, and let me tell you, it seems easy, but there's a very high failure rate. Stick around, let's give it a go. Hi folks, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Corey Wren. I'm a vegan sociologist, vegan feminist, and a vegan witch. On this channel, I look at all things magical, travel, crafting, theory, and I make it vegan. So today's video is about bath bombs. Bath bombs tend to be vegan as far as I'm aware. Sometimes they may be the sneaky, nasty ingredient in there. Nonetheless, they tend to be quite pricey. I think they got really popular with the rise of Lush, the cosmetics company and high street store. I'm not a fan of Lush for many reasons. First off, they're not a vegan company. Secondly, they have a pretty weird track record with women. I'll post a link below in an older blog where I talk about some of that. And also, just more importantly, I like to be able to make things myself. And making bath bombs can be a way to imbrue some magic of your own making into something, you've made yourself, and you can gift that, treat yourself, or you can gift people with that. So I actually have been trying to make them for some time now, and there's been quite a lot of trial and error for me. And for the most part, it's been error. I have one book to blame for this, actually. So back in 2018, when this book came out, The Witch's Book of Self-Care, it really took off. It was a follow-up to the Green Witch book, and I remember picking that book up when it first came out as well. These are mainstream witchcraft books, and they're designed to, what I do like about them is that they're designed to introduce a bit of basic introductory theory, but they give you lots of practical recipes that you can try out yourself. And again, bath bombs are a really great way to do something really witchy. You can put particular essential oils that have magical correspondences. You can put in herbs, essentially making a bath into one big herbal tea. You can make them on certain days for correspondence with Sabbats or lunar phases, or even just certain days of the week, like Monday, Moon Day. So when I'm recording this video, it is a full moon, and I think that is a really great time for doing magical crafting. And the intention was to make gifts under the full moon, imbue them with certain herbs and essential oils, and gift them, and then tell people, like, I made this on the full moon, I put good intentions into it, so that when they use it, it's extra special for them. I sadly live in a tiny little flat in the middle of Canterbury, and I do not have a bathtub. I've not had a bathtub for years. It's a crying shame and a great injustice, I think. And even here in the UK, it's not very common for hotels to even have bathtubs. So it's kind of sad. When I grew up extremely poor. I grew up and we only had a bathtub, a 100-year-old clawfoot tub that was put into the house when the house was built at the turn of the 20th century. But we were so poor we couldn't afford a shower. So we were actually bathing like people did in the 1900s. So anyway, then when I went to university and we had showers, I thought, wow, showers, I've made it. The sad, ironic part is now I crave those bathtubs. So baths, of course, are very important in witchcraft practice. Many ritual workers will suggest that you do a cleansing in a bath, an herbal bath, before doing your rituals. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I have to make do with a shower. You can possibly make shower melts, but I feel like those are kind of sad. Anyway, so these are for other people, and I've been trying for a very long time to make these work. But this is the culprit, I think, for why my bath bombs have not been working. It's a pretty straightforward recipe. They say to use baking soda, to use a bit of citric acid, to use some cornstarch the citric acid gives it the fizz, interacts with the baking soda when it hits water. And then the cornstarch holds it together. And then you add your essential oils, Epsom salts, and herbs, or even food coloring if you want to make it a different color, which is not really my thing. And oftentimes certain essential oils will add a tint to it, or certain herbs will add a tint to it, so you don't need to do that. And I've tried this recipe many, many times at great expense because it calls for quite a lot of baking soda and quite a lot of, even just, you have to buy citric acid especially. Like, who has that laying around? You can buy these things in bulk, but even so, the baking soda, you fly through that when you're making these recipes, and it's not exactly a cheap craft to fail at many times. So after the first time I figured I must just not be reading the recipe right. The second time I thought, well, maybe I'm not following the instructions to the T. And then the third time I was like, all right, maybe I think this has not been trialed. They actually don't, maybe have not actually tested to see if it works. Don't use this for their bath bomb recipe. It's hokum. It's not real. So I went on the internet and started YouTubing some people who do this for a living. And one secret ingredient that they mention is to use a type of glycerin, like a polysorbate glycerin, to hold everything together. And you're supposed to use that in minute amounts. So I had to go on the internet and find that in a vegan version. I think it is supposed to be vegan, but you always have to be careful. So this is where I'm at now. I'm opening this up to the internet because I think it's a great way to do something that's it's vegan crafting. It's a great witchy ritual practice, and it's all about gifting for other people and also, of course, self-care. So let's see if it works. The one tricky thing that we need to worry about here is that you have to be very sparing with the water. You have to drizzle in a tiny bit of water in order for everything to activate and stick together. But the problem is, the second you add that water, it will gradually start to ask the citric acid and baking soda to interact and fizz, and it will make these nice, compact, beautiful little balls in the forms. They look great. Set them on the plate to dry. They have to dry for 24 hours before you can package them. And then after a few minutes, they just start to slowly, and then eventually just. So I think that you probably shouldn't be using any water at all. So I'm going to give that a go, and instead of using the water, make the liquid this glycerin stuff and see if it helps hold it together. But that's the trick. So I'll show you the recipe. I'm going to show you the recipe as I go along. I'm going to stop talking and let you just watch me work. But basically, that's the aim here. That's what causes the major failure, is that it's too moist. The moisture is causing the chemical reaction, and the bath bombs essentially get triggered in the making of them. So we have to figure out how to do that without setting them off. So wish me luck. The other reason I do not like this book and would not recommend is that it is not vegan. I think maybe also not vegetarian. And the thing is, like, some of the recipes, like there's more bath recipes in here, like for milk baths. And they do say, well, if you don't want to use dairy milk, the actual breast milk of another species that has been tortured and killed, you're welcome to use other milks. But they say this is just not going to be as powerful or potent. Okay, that's BS, and I think pretty gross. Like, what is magical about steaming in the breast milk of a mother and that's not your milk, that's baby's milk, and you've stolen it? I guess so you can have, what I think is happening with a lot of these books that poo-poo on veganism and poo-poo on vegetarianism, but specifically veganism, what I think is going on here is that we live in a society where we associate animal products with wealth and status. So to be able to take a bath in milk, as opposed to simple old plain oat milk, which, by the way, is classic herbal medicine, the idea here is that that is a sense of status. Like, you feel wealthy, powerful, and rich when you can afford to exploit those below you and use their products for your own privileged use. That is a theme I see throughout witchcraft, is this notion of romanticizing, fetishizing the exploitation of animals because it's a sign of wealth. I think we need to scrap that immediately and start thinking about, well, what other gifts do we have? Actual gifts from nature that aren't stolen. Like, using oat milk is totally fine. It does wonders for your skin. What is it in breast milk that they're even talking? It's lactic acid, isn't it? So it's softening up your skin with a mild acid burn. So gross. So do not recommend. However, I will say that it has inspired some crafting ideas. I will give it that. But this is a mainstream press witchcraft book. Like, this is not from a witch press. I actually talk about this book in my own book, Vegan Witchcraft, and I do criticize quite a bit of the disparaging comments they make about vegan foods. And the idea also with self-care is that the idea is that you're caring for yourself by harming others. I mean, that's the gist of it. There's recipes in here also for meat-based foods, like soups and stews that call for dead animals. Like, how is that self-care? First off, it's toxic to the human body. We have research on that. And secondly, it's animal sacrifice. And I don't want animal sacrifice in my witchcraft. I don't consider it self-care to harm others. Well, you guys are good luck. Or maybe it's just the pressure of having an audience. But this is the first time I've finally had success with the bath bombs. So yeah, that book is bogus. Don't fool with it. It's not vegan. And the recipe obviously was not even tested anyway. In this particular case for the bath bombs. So I don't trust anything in that book now. Good old YouTube was for the save there, for the win. And really, truly, the magic ingredient was using a vegan polysorbate instead of water, because water makes the baking soda and the acid interact. And so they slowly expand until I have big blobs of nothing. Which is fine. I don't like to waste, so what I did do is just crumble them up. Actually, let me show you. So here's my graveyard of bath bombs past who just didn't survive. And I just use this for foot soaks. And it smells great. And this one, you can see these were yellow. I forget what herb or essential. Sometimes the essential oils will dye it. I don't have food coloring to add to my bath bombs. I feel like that's a bit unnecessary, and it makes me a bit uncomfortable as well because I live in Southeast England and all of our water goes completely untreated directly into the sea. So only natural stuff for me, please. Except for, unfortunately, polysorbate 80, which I think is a vegetable glycerin. Yes, but you do have to make sure it's vegan. So here they are, and they're actually stuck to the board. I finished these, and then I went to go work in a pub on my writing and left them by the kitchen window, and then what do you know, it rained, so that you can see that some were close to the window and got a bit damp. But whoever I gift these to will not know what that is. They just look decorative and beautiful. So I'm going to bag these up, and these are for Yule. I'm going to be giving them as little gifts. This time I was so successful, gosh, I might make a second batch because I made little ones I might make enough to where people can have 2 instead of just 1. But I also, and they just smell great. So yesterday when I finished making them, the whole house smelled like lavender. It's just really pleasant. So also, I want to make a point that when I was experimenting and making this batch, the first 2 or 3 I was able to do, but after that, they just would not hold together when I was using the form. And so I had to add more of the polysorbate. And you can sort of see a difference because this is the first one. It's actually, I don't know if you can tell, it looks like it sunk a little bit further down. It's a little less spherical than the others. So the trick truly is the polysorbate to keep it from reacting. And it is important to use a dab of water. And I mean, I just used a tiny sprinkling of water because that supposedly makes them harder, so less crumbly. So there you have it. That really stuck on there. I'm going to bag these up now. Handy dandy gift bags. Now, theoretically, you should be using plastic bags because they will lose their scent and they do go stale after a few months. I'm recording this in mid-September, hoping to give these away in 2 months. I assume they'll keep most of their smell in that time, and they definitely won't go stale by then. If I had lots of little plastic baggies, then I would use that, but I don't like to buy plastic, so paper it is. Some of my friends I'm going to give 2. There's just enough room in here for 2 to safely fit into the bottom. So cute. So precious. Come on.